I thought helping my father was the right thing to do. At first, everything seemed normal, until chaos began to reign in my home. What I later learned about his real plans completely shocked me. To be honest, even before that call, I knew that letting my father live with me was a bad idea. Not because I didn't love him, but because I knew too well what kind of person he had been my whole life. I am 35 years old. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and 4 years ago I bought my own house, small, without luxury, but completely mine, for which I worked hard for almost 10 years. This house was not just a place to live for me, but a point of support, proof that I had finally built the stability that I never had as a child. My parents divorced when I was 19. It all happened suddenly. My father lost his job, started drinking, constantly lashed out at my mother, and blamed her for all his problems. One day, he just disappeared for a few days, leaving us without money and without explanation. My mother found him at his friend's house. They had a big fight, and then he said he was tired of his family and wanted his freedom. A couple of months later, they divorced. My mother sold the house and moved to Florida, and I stayed in North Carolina, first living with a friend, then renting a room and working 2 jobs to pay for college. All this time, my father was hanging out with his friends, sometimes calling me drunk, complaining about life and asking for money. Even then, it was clear that he would never take responsibility for himself. Over the next few years, he was evicted several times for debts. He quarreled with the people he was staying with temporarily, and each time he said that he had been set up. So when he called 8 months ago and said in a tired voice that the landlord was selling the building and all the tenants had been given 2 months to move out, my heart sank. He complained at length about the rent, saying he had almost no money, and then cautiously asked if he could stay with me for a little while, just a couple of weeks, a month at most, until he found something of his own and promised to help with the expenses. That same evening, I told my girlfriend Emily everything, and she immediately tensed up, reminding me of all the past stories of how he stayed with people and never left on time. We argued for a long time, but guilt won out again, and I agreed. The first few weeks were indeed peaceful. My father helped around the house, cooked meals, and occasionally gave me money for groceries, and for a moment, I thought that perhaps he had finally changed. However, very soon, strange little things began to happen. He rearranged the furniture in the living room, saying that it was more comfortable that way. Then my mugs disappeared. He threw them away because they were old. Then he changed the curtain in the bathroom and the light bulbs. Emily quietly remarked that she felt like he wasn't visiting, but settling in. Then his mail started arriving, first a couple of letters, then stacks of bank statements and bills. When I asked why he was putting my address on everything, he said it was easier that way while he was staying here temporarily. A month passed, then another, and he stopped giving me money, but started controlling everything. How much I spent, why I ordered food, why I turned on the air conditioner. When I reminded him of our agreement and asked if he had found a place to live, he immediately took offense, said that I was kicking him out, and uttered his favorite phrase about how, after everything he had done for me, I was treating him this way. After this argument, he began to behave even more confidently, as if the house already belonged to him. He started bringing friends over without warning, and one day Emily and I came home to find a noisy group of unfamiliar men with beer and loud music. When I asked him to warn us, he smirked and said that it was his house too, and that as long as he lived there, everything was shared. Emily couldn't take it anymore and told him straight out that he was taking over my house. After that, my father became cold toward her and constantly hinted that she was interfering with family life. A few days later, I saw his name neatly printed on the mailbox next to mine, and then my anxiety turned to fear. Soon I began to notice that he was coming into my bedroom and rearranging things, and once I found my documents in his room. Emily said he was looking for something, and soon everything became clear. One day, I came home earlier than usual and heard him talking on the phone. The kitchen door was ajar, and he was quietly saying that he now lives with his son, that the house is registered in my name, but that's not a problem. The main thing was to get a foothold, because now, according to the law, they can't just kick him out, that he has already given this address to the bank and the debt collectors. I felt a chill inside. I started looking for information on the internet, reading articles and forums, and even asked a real estate agent I knew, who confirmed that in North Carolina, a person who has lived in a house for a certain amount of time and receives mail there can be considered a tenant and cannot be evicted without a court order. Then I realized that my father knew all this in advance. I started finding letters with debts, overdue payments, threats of court action, amounts reaching tens of thousands of dollars. When I talked to him, he first yelled, then cried, said that his life was ruined, apologized, and promised to change everything. I almost believed him, but soon the debt collectors started calling, and it became clear that the situation was much more serious. When I asked him directly if he had used my address on purpose, he admitted that he needed to establish himself. After that, he started turning my relatives against me. My aunt yelled at me on the phone, my uncle wrote threatening messages, and many said that I was heartless and that Emily was manipulating me. Then my father called the police, claiming that I was harassing him. The officers confirmed that I couldn't do anything without a court order. After that, he became even more insolent, making noise at night, bringing people over, taking my things, and even trying to sell my old TV. So I filed for official eviction. When I handed him the papers, he fell to his knees, cried, and begged for forgiveness, promising to leave on his own. But Emily reminded me that he always does that. The trial lasted more than a month, and he tried several times to call the police with false accusations, but in the end, the judge ruled in my favor. When my father was packing his things, he cried again and said he had nowhere to go. I felt sorry for him, so I didn't let him back in, but I paid for a month's stay at a hostel, hoping that he would be able to change something. Update 1. It was only 3 days after the trial when my father showed up at my house again in the evening. He looked tired and broken, immediately started apologizing, said that he realized his mistakes, that the conditions in the hostel were terrible, and that he was afraid to stay there. He cried and swore that he would be quiet and move out in a couple of weeks, but Emily said we had heard that many times before, and I refused, after which he left angry and slammed the gate. Update 2. The next day, the debt collectors called me again and casually mentioned that my father had more than 8 debt cases open against him. Later, I found court records and realized that his financial problems had been going on for years. After that, my aunt apologized and admitted that my father had tried to live with her before with the same story. Update 3. A week later, my father came back with some documents, supposedly confirming that he was looking for work, but it turned out that most of the letters had not even been sent, and when Emily pointed this out, he resorted to tears and accusations again. Relatives began to tell their stories of how my father had lived with them temporarily and caused problems, and it became clear that this pattern was part of his life. That was the whole story. Now here's the question. Do you think the main character did the right thing by evicting his father and not letting him back in, despite his apologies? And was it worth showing mercy and paying for a month's stay at a hostel, or should he have stopped helping him altogether? Write what you would have done in his place.